Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Val and welcome to day 15 of our 200 days of Psalms. And today's Psalm is actually Psalms chapter 15, where we see David is actually meditating on the character of the man who is able to dwell in the presence of God. And so yeah, let's get into it. In verse 1, we see David begins by asking the question, Lord, who may abide in your tabernacle? Who may dwell in your holy hill? A tabernacle is just a great center of meeting, and a good example was when God told Moses to build it. A tabernacle, a great tent of meeting, when they were actually doing the Exodus. And here is like David was wondering, like, who is able to dwell in the presence of God? Who is able to dwell where God dwells, which is actually in a great tent of meeting. In verse 2, David just describes the character of the man who's able to come before God, because he says he has to be upright, he has to be working out his righteousness, and he has to speak truth in his heart. And in verse 3, David continues to describe the character of the man who is able to dwell in the presence of God, because he says, he who does not backbite with his tongue, he who does not do any evil to his neighbor, or actually take reproach against his friend. And he was like, David was trying to teach us that how we treat other people is actually a matter of the heart, and God looks at our heart, and us being right with him depends on how we treat other people as well. As much as we want to be right with God, he loves his other people, and if you're not treating other people right, he can never be right with God. And these are actually the matters of the heart, and God looks at the matters of the heart more than anything else. In verse 4, David still continues to describe the character of the man who's able to dwell in the presence of God, and he tells us that for us to continue sustaining the presence of God, we need to keep our promise, the promises we make to other people. Like, even no matter what it is, it just matters. We need to be promise keepers of what we tell other people. We need to oppose evil, and we also need to honor those who actually fear the Lord. Because he says, in whose eyes a vile person is despised, but honors those who fear the Lord, but also has sworn in his heart and does not change. And in verse 5, David continues to describe the man who's able to dwell in the presence of God, and he says, a man who does not take bribe against the innocent is able to dwell in the presence of God. And how we also use our money is very important, because David here is trying to tell us that we cannot take our money to usury. So for us to be able to maintain the presence of God, all these things come from God. As simple as just the money that we have, it is God who gives us, and he also needs to give us wisdom on how to use. So for us to be right with God, we also have to be conscious of how we even use our money. Even taking bribes is actually not a way of God. And David just concludes the psalm by saying that anyone who does this can never be moved. I do believe that for us to walk uprightly with God, we ought to be obedient. We ought to do that which God desires, and it's really just righteousness. God desires for us to walk in righteousness, and especially fixing the matters of the heart, which he actually looks at the heart more than anything else, and he's more interested in the small things that we think that they are small. And that's all I had for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on my next video, and bye.